For centuries, the greatest obstacle to global trade wasn't a lack of technology or money. It was geography. Imagine you're the captain of a cargo ship sailing from New York to San Francisco in the 1800s today. That journey is routine.
But back then, there was no shortcut. Every ship had to travel nearly 22,000 kilometers around the southern tip of South America, passing through the legendary Cape Horn, one of the most dangerous stretches of ocean on Earth. Violent storms could appear without warning. Massive waves destroyed ships that had survived entire oceans. Freezing temperatures, powerful currents, and months at sea turned every voyage into a gamble. The longer ships remained at sea, the more money they lost. Every extra day meant higher fuel costs, delayed cargo, and greater risks for crews and investors alike. The world desperately needed another route. There was only one place where such a shortcut seemed possible. A narrow strip of land in Central America, only about 82 kilometers wide. On paper, digging a canal across that land looked simple. In reality, it became one of the most ambitious and deadly engineering projects in human history. Thousands of workers would lose their lives. Millions of dollars would disappear. Entire governments would become involved. And the race to build this canal would eventually change the balance of global power. Today, the Panama Canal is far more than a waterway connecting two oceans. It is one of the most important arteries of the global economy. Every year, thousands of ships carrying oil, food, electronics, automobiles, raw materials, and consumer goods pass through this narrow passage. Goods worth hundreds of billions of dollars rely on it to reach markets faster and more efficiently. Without this canal, many products would become more expensive. Supply chains would slow down. Global trade would become less efficient, and businesses around the world would face higher transportation costs. But the Panama Canal isn't just a story about engineering. It's a story of ambition, failure, disease, politics, and one nation's determination to reshape the world economy forever. This is the story of the canal that changed global trade and why its future may be more uncertain than ever. Long before the first shovel touched the ground, people understood that a canal across Central America could change the world. Spanish explorers had recognized the idea as early as the 16th century. After discovering the Pacific Ocean, they realized that a narrow strip of land separated two of the world's largest oceans. If that barrier could somehow be removed, ships would no longer need to sail around the entire continent of South America. But for centuries, the idea remained impossible. The technology simply didn't exist. The dense jungles of Panama were unlike anything European engineers had ever faced. Thick forests covered the landscape, rivers flooded without warning, and heavy tropical rains turned construction sites into fields of mud. Even reaching the area was a challenge. Despite these obstacles, global trade continued to grow. The Industrial Revolution transformed the world's economy. Steamships carried larger amounts of cargo than ever before. Factories demanded faster deliveries, and international commerce expanded at an incredible pace. Every unnecessary kilometer cost money. Every extra week at sea reduced profits. Business leaders, governments, and investors all reached the same conclusion: the world needed a shortcut. Then, in 1869, something extraordinary happened. The Suez Canal officially opened in Egypt. For the first time in history, ships could travel directly between Europe and Asia without sailing around Africa. Trade became faster, transportation costs fell dramatically, and the canal was celebrated as one of the greatest engineering achievements ever completed. Its success inspired the entire world. If a canal could be built through the deserts of Egypt, why not build another through the jungles of Panama? One man believed he already had the answer. His name was Ferdinand de Lesseps. He was the engineer who had become a global hero after completing the Suez Canal. Newspapers praised him as a genius. Investors trusted him without hesitation. Governments admired his vision. When he announced that he would build the Panama Canal, thousands of people invested their savings in the project. Most believed success was inevitable. After all, if he had connected two seas once before, why couldn't he do it again? But Panama was nothing like Egypt. The jungle would prove to be an enemy far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. And what began as one of the world's most ambitious construction projects was about to become one of history's greatest engineering disasters. Construction officially began in 1881. Excitement spread across Europe. Newspapers described the Panama Canal as the next great engineering triumph, and thousands of investors poured money into the project. Workers arrived from across the Caribbean and beyond, hoping to be part of history. But almost immediately, reality set in. Unlike the flat deserts of Egypt, Panama was a nightmare for engineers. Towering mountains blocked the planned route. Dense jungle covered nearly every meter of land. Tropical rain fell for much of the year, flooding excavation sites and triggering massive landslides that buried weeks of progress in a matter of hours. Every time workers believed they were moving forward, nature erased their work. But the jungle itself wasn't the deadliest enemy. It was something almost invisible. Mosquitoes. At the time, scientists still didn't fully understand that mosquitoes spread diseases such as malaria and yellow fever. Workers had no idea that a single bite could become a death sentence. Men who appeared healthy in the morning were often too weak to stand just days later. Hospitals quickly filled with patients suffering from high fevers, severe pain, and uncontrollable vomiting. Many never recovered. The death toll climbed relentlessly. Fear spread through the construction camps. Some workers abandoned the project, while others stayed because they had no other way to earn a living. Meanwhile, the engineering problems only grew worse. The original plan called for a sea-level canal, similar to the Suez Canal. But Panama's rugged landscape made that vision almost impossible. Engineers struggled to remove enormous amounts of rock and earth, while constant landslides repeatedly buried expensive equipment and freshly dug sections. Costs exploded. Deadlines slipped further and further behind schedule. Investors who had once believed they were funding one of history's greatest achievements began to panic. By the late 1880s, the project was collapsing. The company ran out of money. Construction stopped. Hundreds of thousands of investors lost their savings in what became one of the biggest financial scandals of the century. By the time France abandoned the project, more than 20,000 workers had lost their lives, making it one of the deadliest construction projects ever attempted. To many people, the Panama Canal had become proof that some dreams were simply impossible. The jungle had won. Or so the world believed. Because just a few years later, another nation would step forward bringing new technology, enormous resources, and ambitions that reached far beyond building a canal. It wanted something even greater. To reshape global power itself. As France walked away from Panama, most of the world assumed the canal would never be completed. The project had already consumed enormous amounts of money, claimed tens of thousands of lives, and destroyed the reputation of one of history's most celebrated engineers. Few investors were willing to risk another fortune on what many now called an impossible dream. But one country saw something different. The United States didn't just see a canal, it saw power. At the beginning of the 20th century, America was emerging as a global economic and military force. Its factories were producing goods at record levels, its navy was expanding rapidly, and trade across both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans was becoming increasingly important. There was just one problem. Without a canal, American ships still had to sail thousands of extra kilometers around South America to move between the country's east and west coasts. In both business and military operations, that delay could be extremely costly. President Theodore Roosevelt believed the United States could not become a true global power without controlling a faster route between the oceans. In 1903, the United States backed Panama's independence from Colombia. Soon after, the new Panamanian government granted America the rights to build and operate the canal. Construction resumed in 1904. This time, the approach was completely different. American engineers accepted that a sea-level canal was unrealistic. Instead, they designed a system of massive locks that would lift ships high above sea level before lowering them back down on the other side. It was a bold solution that dramatically reduced the amount of excavation required. The second major breakthrough came from medicine. Scientists had finally confirmed that mosquitoes were responsible for spreading malaria and yellow fever. Under the leadership of Dr. William Gorgas, swamps were drained, standing water was eliminated, buildings were screened, and large-scale mosquito control campaigns were launched. For the first time, workers had a real chance of surviving. Although construction remained dangerous, disease rates dropped dramatically, allowing the project to move forward at a pace that had once seemed impossible. After 10 years of relentless work, the impossible became reality. On August 15, 1914, the first official ship crossed the Panama Canal. A dream that had defeated France was finally complete. The world had gained a new shortcut. And the United States had gained one of the most valuable strategic assets on Earth. From that moment on, the Panama Canal became far more than an engineering achievement. It became a gateway through which global trade, military power, and economic influence would flow for generations. More than a century after its opening, the Panama Canal remains one of the most important trade routes on Earth. Every year, thousands of ships carrying food, oil, automobiles, electronics, natural gas, and countless other products pass through its locks. Together, they transport hundreds of billions of dollars worth of cargo between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Without the canal, many of these ships would have to sail thousands of extra kilometers around South America. That means longer delivery times, higher fuel costs, and more expensive products for consumers around the world. For shipping companies, saving even a few days can mean millions of dollars. For global businesses, speed is everything. A delayed shipment can interrupt factory production, leave store shelves empty, and increase prices across entire industries. This is why the Panama Canal is much more than a shortcut. It is a critical part of the global supply chain. Every ship that enters the canal must pay a toll. The amount depends on the size of the vessel and the cargo it carries. For the world's largest container ships, the fee can reach hundreds of thousands of dollars for a single transit. Yet shipping companies are willing to pay, because avoiding the canal often costs even more. Over the decades, the canal has generated billions of dollars in revenue and has become the backbone of Panama's economy. But its importance extends far beyond one country. The United States relies on it to move goods efficiently between its east and west coasts. Asian manufacturers use it to reach customers in North America and Europe. Energy companies transport oil and liquefied natural gas through its waters to markets across the globe. In many ways, the Panama Canal quietly keeps the modern economy moving. Most people never think about it. Yet every time someone buys a television, a car, a smartphone, or even groceries, there is a chance those products traveled through this narrow waterway. For over 100 years, the canal has helped make global trade faster, cheaper, and more efficient. But today, a new threat is beginning to emerge. And this time, the challenge isn't disease or engineering. It's something no one can control. Water itself. For decades, the Panama Canal seemed unstoppable. No matter how much global trade expanded, the canal continued to connect two oceans and keep goods moving across the world. But in recent years, a new problem has emerged. Ironically, the world's most important waterway is running out of water. Unlike the Suez Canal, the Panama Canal depends on fresh water. Every time a ship passes through its lock system, millions of liters of fresh water are released into the ocean. That water must be replaced by rainfall, which feeds Gatun Lake, the canal's main source of water. For generations, this system worked almost perfectly, but climate change has begun to alter that balance. Longer dry seasons and lower rainfall have caused water levels to fall to historic lows. As a result, the Panama Canal Authority has been forced to reduce the number of ships allowed to pass each day. Some vessels have waited for days. Others have been forced to take the much longer route around South America. The impact reaches far beyond Panama. Every delay increases transportation costs. Higher transportation costs eventually lead to higher prices for businesses and consumers around the world. At the same time, global trade continues to grow. Larger ships, rising demand, and increasing geopolitical tensions are placing even greater pressure on one of the world's busiest trade routes. Many experts now believe that the future of global commerce will depend on whether the Panama Canal can adapt to a changing climate. New reservoirs, improved water management, and major infrastructure investments are already being discussed. But no solution will be simple. More than 100 years ago, the greatest challenge was building the canal. Today, the challenge is keeping it alive. The Panama Canal is far more than an engineering masterpiece. It is one of the invisible foundations of the modern world. Every day, it quietly saves time, reduces costs, and keeps the global economy moving. Most people will never see it. Most will never sail through it. Yet millions of lives are affected by it every single day. Because sometimes, the most powerful places on Earth aren't the largest countries or the richest cities. They're the narrow passages that connect the world together. And as global trade continues to evolve, one question remains. If the Panama Canal can no longer keep up with the demands of the future, what will the world build next?